Hello. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jenny, and I'm here to discuss bookish things with you today. I'm still catching up for the new year, so today we're going to do our February reading wrap. I read 17 books and spent 15 days aboard cruise ships wandering around the Caribbean in February. It was bliss. There's nothing more than I enjoy than reading on a cruise ship balcony. It is my happy place. So in addition to loads of reading, I got to hug a sloth. Okay, so now that we've dispensed with that cuteness, on to the books. Okay, first was Colleen Hoover's Reminders of Him. This book is about a young woman who, in a state of intoxication, gets in a motor vehicle accident with her fiancé and kills him. While she's in prison on manslaughter, she finds out she's pregnant and gives birth to their daughter. So her daughter ends up in the custody of her fiancé's parents, who, kind of understandably, not only want nothing to do with her, but also want her to have nothing to do with her daughter. The story really begins when she gets out of prison and she starts trying to see her daughter. I actually really liked this book. It has a lot of really sweet relationships, both romantic and otherwise. And you really have to think about the situation from everyone's perspective. It's on the heavier side, but it's still a quick and easy read. This was a good one. 4 stars. All right, next up was Under the Blood Tree by PJ Grondin. To be fair, I've been working on reading this book for about 2.5 years. I met the author at a craft show a few years ago, and because I really love supporting local and independent authors, I picked up a few of his books. That being said, I feel bad saying it, but I thought the book was boring, and I'm glad it's finally over. I left my copy behind in the cruise ship library. 2 stars. Third up in February was another Colleen Hoover read that bears zero relationship to her other book that I read. This one's called Verity. If you watched my January reading wrap, you may recall that I mentioned that Coho has a thing for weird names. Our 2 lead females in this are Verity and Lynn. Verity is a famous author who has suffered a severe brain injury and is no longer able to write. And she's not able to finish a very popular series that she was working on. Lynn is hired by Verity's publisher along with her husband to take over the writing of the series, so to complete it. So Lynn moves in with the family home to have full access to Verity's home office and notes. This book is not a romance. It is a thriller, and it is crazy. Like a good twist, things that make your brain go, what the fork? Read this one. 5 stars. All right, next up, onto the Hawthorne Legacy, Book 2 of the Inheritance Games trilogy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. So this is the continuing story of a 16-year-old girl named Avery who has overnight gone from living in her car to being one of the wealthiest people on the planet. Again, if you watched my January wrap, you'll know I read book 1 in January and that I loved it. This one was less awesome. I kind of felt like Barnes was just trying to make the story work, and a lot of the plot points were just, okay. I've picked up book 3, but I haven't read it yet, but I'm hearing much better things, so fingers crossed. All right, 3-ish stars. Okay, on to the next one, Murder at Melrose Court by Karen Baugh Menuhin. Are you a fan of Agatha Christie novels? If so, you're probably going to love this. Or you could just read an Agatha Christie novel. You know, whatever. It was just a little too on the nose for me. I liked the story, but just a little too meh. All right, 3 stars. Okay, so I don't think I realized how many Colleen Hoover books I read early in the year. Our next book is It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. This is the sequel to Hoover's hyper-famous book, It Ends With Us. If you haven't read It Ends With Us, I can't tell you too much because I don't want to spoil anything. But the general consensus is that Hoover was trying to give her readers the happy ending we all wanted. And I think she got us there without being too perfect or gushy. I kind of like that Hoover writes more complicated characters. Everything isn't perfect all the time, and the problems that the people have are real. So kind of a fan of that. 4 stars on this one for me. Next up, my first ever Emily Henry book. This one was called Book Lovers. So I got lucky and found this one in the cruise ship library. I knocked this out in one day, so definitely a quick and easy read. This is kind of based on the question of what happens to all the women who are left in Hallmark movies, the ones who are career-driven and don't want to have 8 kids and live in a small town in Vermont. So what about those women? Our main character, Nora, is that woman. She's a New York literary agent. She is deeply career-driven, but doesn't she deserve a happy ending too? I really liked this. Check it out, 4 stars. This next book, I kind of bought on a whim while I was walking through the book section of Meijer. I really like historical fiction, particularly World War II fiction, and then even more so when it's about women. So what could go wrong with Lana Kortchik's Daughters of the Resistance? So here's what I really liked about this. This is set in the Ukraine in 1943, and it depicts what was going on the Soviet side of the war, which is something that I personally haven't read a lot about before. So like most books set in World War II, it is heart-wrenching, really heavy stuff. The problem for me was that it felt like it was a little bit slow. I just kept waiting for something to happen, and honestly, even when something was happening, I still felt like I was waiting for something to happen. But the story was good, so 3 stars. All right, next up, The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. This book is weird. So the main character is a guy named Aiden who's kind of stuck in a Groundhog-esque Day nightmare. Every day he wakes up in a remote castle during something of a community family reunion situation. The twist is that every day he's in the body of a different house guest. He has one goal: to prevent the murder of Evelyn Hardcastle, the daughter of the castle's owners. So each guest witnesses a different clue that can help him prevent her murder. Will he be able to figure it out in time to save her? This book was a little bit confusing, lots of characters, but I really liked the weirdness of it. So 5 stars. Have you guys ever been on a cruise? Do you know how when you're on a cruise, sometimes you sit at like big communal tables and you chat through your meals with strangers? Well, we had lunch one day at the Italian restaurant on board, and I met this lovely woman who insisted that I take her copy of Freida McFadden's The Housemaid. I am now a Freida McFadden super groupie. So I read this book in one day on the cruise. This is another one of those super twisty thrillers that you guys know I love so much. So our main character, Millie, is down on her luck in the worst way and is desperate for a job. She gets hired as a live-in housemaid for this hyper-wealthy, upper-class Winchester family. And let me tell you, these people are crazy. They are broken. But the question is, are they more crazy and broken than Millie? Read this. 5 stars. All right, next up was First Case by James Patterson. I am not going to waste a lot of time talking about this one. It was fine. Kind of even reading my notes about it, I don't really remember it. If you've read much James Patterson, you kind of know what to expect here. So you don't really need me to tell you. All right, this next one up, this is one I actually want to talk about. And isn't that why we are here? To talk about the ones that were exciting. Okay, this one is actually a 5-book series called, we're going to say, the Mindf series by S.T. Abbey. The 5 books are The Risk, Sidetracked, Scarlet Angel, The Lies, and Painted All Red. I bought these all rolled up into one volume. It's actually right there. So it's either 5 skinny books or one really thick book. So the best way to describe this would be Criminal Minds meets Dexter. So our main male lead is a profiler for the FBI. Our main female lead she's a serial killer, and a pretty sadistic one. But the question is, do her victims deserve it? This one's probably going to fall under the heading of morally gray. Personally, I'm okay with it, and if you are too, you should read this. It was awesome. 5 stars. Okay, at this point in my reading, I've left the cruise ship behind, and now I've returned to land. My first land-based read was significantly more tame. It was In a Holidaze by Christina Lauren. You may recall from an earlier video that Christina Lauren is actually a joint pen name for 2 authors. They write their books together under this name. So this is the complete opposite of my last twisty read and very much falls under the heading of fluffy romance. It's also very Groundhog Day, so I don't know what that, February Groundhog Day, makes sense. All right, this follows a character named Malin, and she's kind of at a crossroads of her life, and she just can't figure out what makes her happy. Every year she goes with her family to stay at this remote cabin in the woods, with her parents, who are now divorced, and their college friends. This is completely entrenched in one tradition after another. But do these traditions really make anyone happy? Every time Malin makes a wrong turn, she dies and wakes up again on the plane ride into the cabin until she gets it right. It's cute and fluffy, but nothing special. So 3 stars. Anyway, 17 books. We made it to the end. That's the wrap. So my top recs for the month would have to be The Housemaid by Freida McFadden, Verity by Colleen Hoover, and the Mindf series by S.T. Abbey. All twisty thrillers. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these, and if not, what's been your best read so far this year? If you haven't already and you've hung out with me this long, please make sure to like and subscribe. As always, have fun, be safe, and don't murder anyone.